my car freaked the F out. And that's all I have to say.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is a new episode of Basic AF. Tom Anderson, joined by the man that's always overthinking everything, Jeff Battersby. Hello, Jeff.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. How are you, Tom? And you never dance. You know, you do a little neck crack before we kick it off, but I'm over here dancing, having a good time, and you looking like, as my father used to call my oldest daughter, Captain Serious.
Well, I have a bit of a headache this morning.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Yesterday, I told a friend of mine at work, my ears felt like, they didn't feel like it, but you know how when you were a kid, people would say, listen into the seashell and you can hear the sea, right? You hear the ocean in there. That's kind of what my ears were doing yesterday. So I've got some sinus stuff going on, I think.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I've had the same thing for the last probably week and a half.
I think it's the changing weather here.
Yeah, and it's super fluctuating. It's like 60 degrees one day and then, 24 the next, at least where I live.
It's definitely March. So,
yeah, that was February, pal. We've only
it's March just today.
Stepped into March is exactly right.
Yeah, I think we've stepped into a lot of things, but March is the one for today.
I had to check my shoes. Hold on a second.
All right, so we do thank you for being here with us once again. If you are new, first time giving us a listen, we do appreciate that, and we do hope to earn a spot on your playlist. If you like what you're hearing and have hung around, if you'd be so kind as to give us a rating and or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen, Pocket Cast, Overcast, doesn't really matter. If you help spread the word of the show, we would be forever grateful. And would appreciate
indeed.
that.
And we are growing. We're getting more and more downloads every year.
That's in large part to word of mouth that people are sharing the show. We do appreciate it. So,
absolutely.
Topics for today's show. We're just going to do a news roundup. It's been a while since we've done that. We did the big tips and tricks show a few weeks ago with Gannon Nordberg. Thank him again for coming on for that. That was good. We had a lot of good tips. So if you haven't listened to that one, you've skipped ahead to this, go back and listen to it. I think there's some things there. So back in January, we talked a little bit in episode 26 about the Clicks keyboard for iPhone. That thing had been shown off at CES and was getting a lot of publicity at the time. And it was buzzed. And so I had nothing better to do, so I ordered one. And it took...
in a pocket full of cash.
Yeah, flush with cash. We'll come back to that probably in the next episode. But so it showed up a couple of weeks ago, and I got to spend a little bit of time with it. And in that episode, back in episode 26, really the only thing we had to go at that point was the website, and had a couple of videos up there, which we both commented. The video was better than we expected, just by the how they went in depth on what they were thinking about it as they made it. And we both commented that we expected it to be pretty good. Like they'd put a lot of thought into it. And so when it came in, it pretty much lived up to expectations. Like it's very well made.
How do you know that? Yeah. So Tom, let's just, you did say that you were buying it straight out of the box.
Yep.
You got the bumblebee looking thing, which is the name, which I like. A nice yellow color.
It's nice yellow.
Now. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how it's been used?
So here's the thing.
What's the thing?
The thing is...
that sounds like a caveat, pal.
It's big.
And you're using a 14 Pro, not a Pro Max, right?
14 Pro. Okay. And my wife has the 14 Pro Max, and so I put them kind of side by side, and it becomes just a tad bit taller than the 14 Pro Max.
Okay.
Okay, so a little bit taller. Not really significantly wider, which I kind of wish it was. I think it would spread the keys out a little bit, but I can see why they didn't do that. And so you and I think both at that time said, it looks like it's going to be a little top heavy, right? Because the phone's up top, keyboard's probably the lower fourth of the case, which they don't really call it a case. They just call it an iPhone keyboard. But the balance is pretty good. Like I was surprised. Doesn't really feel like it's going to flip off of your fingers as you're holding it to type. when I first put it on, to be quite honest, I was transported back to 2007 pre-iPhone and why I hated keyboards, physical keyboards on phones.
Oh, come on. Everybody says that that's better than what we currently have, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. But, and it was funny because it was like instantaneous. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But the keyboard itself is pretty good. It's, the buttons are clicky. They don't really squirm around. They're not soft and squishy when you're trying to type and you don't miss one because it's just not firm enough to register the press. So that's nice. I'll tell you the backlighting is nice. That all works really well. The keyboard shortcuts that, of course, iOS has with an external keyboard has been really nice. And they've built in some keys into the keyboard. So you've got a command key, you've got a tab key, you've got a microphone to kind of bring up dictation or Siri. So again, well thought out. I have been very slow typing on this thing.
Compared to what you were doing on the virtual keyboard?
Yes.
And let me ask you a question about the virtual keyboard. Do you use the slide method or do you type, key by key?
So primarily it is key by key. There are times if I'm, got my hands full or something and I need to just
driving the car.
Quickly. No, not driving the car. I'll do the swipe, which works surprisingly well, really. I mean, it's just not the first thing I think of. I know some people just swipe all the time, and I've never been able to make that shift. But so that's been the biggest thing because the buttons are small. And with the virtual keyboard, you've got kind of the bigger touch area. And I don't know if you recall, but back when the iPhone first came out and people were typing on it, Apple kind of talked about how because it's a software keyboard, they do some, predictions based on what you're typing. And they were able to expand the target area around what key they thought you were going to hit next so that you didn't have to be as precise.
You didn't. I, on the other hand.
And I think that having that is second nature at this point because we've been using those for so long, I think. And to go back to the smaller physical keys and having to actually depress that key has just really made me a slow typer. And not very accurate.
Really? So that was a question I was going to ask you, is whether or not your accuracy is better because you have a physical keyboard or whether your accuracy was worse because you're used to, being able to fudge it a little bit when you're working on the virtual keyboard.
Yeah, and I think I've got like some bad technique picked up from the virtual keyboard, if that's possible. Because I know some people just use a single finger and they just peck things out, and I use two thumbs, but like I'm crossing over and stuff. Like it's a mess the way that I do it, and I'm sure that's part of it too. And I suspect like if I really stick with this keyboard, that would pick up. But you almost kind of have to use like the very tip of your thumb or even the fingernail is a little easier to get to it. And that's what I remember from those keyboards back in the day too. And so I think the takeaway for this is, and by the way, when I posted this on Threads back then, when I first got it, got a lot of questions and quite a few people were interested or they had ordered and theirs hadn't come in yet. So I do think there are people that want these types of things.
Yeah, I think there are people that have, that use the old ones. I never really used anything that had an actual keyboard on it before the iPhone. I had, oh my gosh, I think I had a Nokia phone or something like that. Can't even remember who made it.
So that was probably just the T9 for texting.
Yeah,
right? Press 1 3 times to get an A.
Hideous hat, by the way. Yeah, that was worse than, it was like, can I just call you? That was what I felt like when I was using that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I there are people that that are kind of in love with that kind of keyboard and like that tactile feedback that you get, which you do, by the way, get some tactile feedback with your iPhone on a virtual keyboard. but you've been now using this for a month solid, right?
2 weeks.
Has it been that little time?
Yeah, I went back and checked. It's only been a couple of weeks because that's at first I put in the show note. I was like, oh yeah, I've used this for close to a month. I was like, no,
that's what I thought too. That means I guess 2024 is going much slower than I thought it was, which is a good thing because the years fly by the older you get. Okay, so it's only been 2 weeks. It at this point in time, are you thinking that this is a keeper, or this is you're still kind of testing the waters?
Well, I'm keeping it because the return policy wasn't what I thought it was, so I'm stuck with it. Once I opened it, I had to keep it. So,
wait,
I thought it
what
was the
return?
Apple equivalent. It was 14 days, but it was unopened. I was like, oh yeah, well,
unopened.
Yeah, so
that's the policy.
What it said.
Unopened,
right?
Great. I bought it. I put it on my desk. I decided I didn't want it.
Did you open
ridiculous.
it? It's yours, pal. Which
that's interesting.
They're a small outfit, so
yeah, I get it.
They can't really do like Apple did with the Vision Pro and just give people like a 2-week test window and then let them bring it back. I'm sure they're not that flush with cash. So the other thing that was really nice with it, and I could see somebody if they're into content creation, or if they're doing live stuff with TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or if they're just really text heavy and using notes or pages or Bear or whatever they're inputting text into. What's nice about having that keyboard being recognized by the phone as an external keyboard is when you go into the Notes app and you want to start typing, you get full screen Note. There's no keyboard blocking up half of it. If you're in Safari, you get full screen Safari, right? So if you're typing something in there, the keyboard shortcuts again are really nice because you Command H, you go back home, you Command spacebar, you get Spotlight, you search, you hit the return key, the app opens. All that stuff's really nice. So I think it's a little bit pricey, but I think if someone is diehard physical keyboard type person and has missed it since the iPhone and Android and everything's kind of taken over, it's great.
Okay, cool. Excellent.
Yeah, so if you're in the market for one of those, I think it's great. If you're on the fence, decide if you think you're leaning towards loving it more than not because of the price and everything. But quality-wise, very good. Keyboard is great. So if that's your thing, check it out.
Right, awesome. And we will have something. We make no money off of this, but we will have a link back to this in the show notes. By the way, presently they are almost completely sold out on every single one of these things. It looks like, which is good for them. I'm happy to hear that for them. But depending on which one you get, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're not going to be able to get that until May. We are currently in March, the very first few days of March.
So I could probably sell mine and maybe make a few bucks.
Yeah, exactly. Hop on eBay and make a fortune. Better than a return policy. So yeah, they're all the iPhone 14 Pro is the one with the shortest amount of time out. That's 2 to 3 weeks. So
and they've got some marketing muscle behind it because Michael Fisher and Crackberry Kevin are the two of the co-founders, and they've got big audiences and long history in the mobile phone business and things like that. So
yeah, well, I hope they're making a fat load of money.
Hope so. Yeah, good for them.
All right. So that's that news. We have other kind of big news. No news that you and I were actually going to be interested in getting into, but Apple this past week decided to drop their Apple Car project. It was called Project Titan. And kind of interesting. I don't think either you or I were interested in an Apple car, and it wasn't clear yet whether this was going to be an all electric car. Although I think that was the case. Nor was it clear whether or not this was going to be autonomous driving vehicle. But Apple, after I think they first started doing this in about 2014. And or it was rumored that they were working on something like this in 2014, and then as of this last week, they dropped out of it altogether, announced formally that they were dropping out of it altogether. And so kind of interesting. And we wanted to talk a little bit about Apple cars, maybe cars in general when it comes to tech. And Tom, off to you.
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, like you said, the rumors of that kicked up 2014. And then Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, as he is oft to do, has these scoops, if you will. So apparently there were 2,000 employees, they were told. So like Apple didn't send out a press release, but internally, apparently they gave the message to all these employees. And I think it was Jeff Williams that did that. Chief Operating Officer, Jeff Williams, was canceled. And apparently that surprised some of those, at least 2,000 people. And it looks like some of them are going to be shifted over to Apple's AI division to work on that stuff, which is
generative AI.
Yes, which is apparently going to be a big focus at WWDC this year, which should be fun to see what Apple has planned for that. Yes, this has been an interesting thing. I have thought from the beginning that this was kind of a wild idea for Apple to get into, of course, and it goes back to some of the same things we've said a bunch of times on this show with Apple, and some of the decisions that they make is being on the outside. You don't know like what the intention really is.
Correct.
So this is all
even on the inside. I think
right. A lot of them,
very few people have any idea what the intentions are.
Yeah. So this is all outside perspective, which is all we've got. So take it for what it's worth. And they apparently spent a ton of money on this. Not that they don't have it
in the billions. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's half a quarter revenue or something. which hey, that's the benefit of
there you
being
go,
so massively successful is you've got play money. And I suspect even if they never produce a car, which doesn't sound like they will, for sure things are going to come out of that project that do reach market if they haven't already, right? Because we just don't know what's in there. And you can see that in Vision Pro, like with some of the things that have come to it, how Apple is really, really good at executing where work just kind of builds on top of work and builds on top of work, and all of the materials work that they've done with the Apple Watch into those headbands for the Vision Pro, digital crown for the Vision Pro, the button. I mean, there's so much stuff that they just kind of build upon that extends into other products. So I'm sure we'll see that. We may never know what it was.
Well, you may already be seeing that in the Vision Pro.
Quite
if you think about it, the cameras that are on the exterior, and the cameras that are on the interior that know what your eyes are doing and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
The fact that, and you'll recall when I said that I tested this, I didn't have to take my hands out of my lap and was able to very gently tap in order to be able to navigate my way through that Vision Pro experience. That's all stuff that the automobile that they quote unquote were working on may have been a part of it. I think what's interesting is we'll have a couple of links to articles. Some are not gift articles. I apologize. Others will be gift article links that you can get to, and I'll see if I can maybe find the other ones. But the Washington Post 3 weeks ago, gift article available for this one on the site. The Washington Post actually did an article 3 weeks ago saying Apple's great guns with this. They've got vehicles driving around, in Cupertino and other places that are using their technology. What's interesting is it was not anything that looked like any kind of prototype. They're doing a lot of camera work. They were doing a lot of driving around with those vehicles. Apple never at any point in time applied for, nor did they get a self-driving license. They always had licenses that required that somebody was in the vehicle itself, capable of controlling what it was that the vehicle was doing. Whereas, the Waymo guys, so Google and obviously Elon, whatever the heck his name is, the guy that does Twitter. I've done a lot of things to make that guy angry. they're all into the self-driving, totally autonomous vehicle. Apple never, while they may have used some of those features, they always had somebody in the vehicle able to control what it is that it was doing. My feeling about this, again, being nobody with no inside information, Apple at WWDC last year talked about CarPlay and integrating CarPlay into the whole system of vehicles, making it so you have CarPlay essentially driving the car. I wonder whether or not that's not what this was all about, because that would control cameras. That would control a lot of the assisted driving that was going to be going on in the system. I will note, and I sent you and actually Gannon pictures a couple weeks ago. I had never tried this before. I always use CarPlay and Apple Maps in my car, in my now new BMW. And one of the things that I noted is that in my head unit in the car, not the radio unit, but in the console where you see speed and all that kind of stuff, when I was using Apple Maps to go someplace and I had what was normally the BMW map forward, in the console, as soon as I started driving somewhere, that switched over to Apple Maps. It was not just using what was in the using what's integrated into the car itself. So my guess is that Apple really was working on the software component of this. They are largely a software company. They obviously are a very good hardware company, but I'm with you. An Apple car, first of all, I could never afford one. It came out.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
$170,000.
Yeah, but it's a great car.
Just put it on your Apple Card.
But interest fee for free for 12 months.
12 payments of $15,000 a month. Great.
Yeah, there you go.
Sign me up.
Right. No big deal. I'll sleep in my car. Thanks. So my feeling is that this has been more about developing really intelligent software in the vehicles. I'm going to step back and say something else too. I've never driven. Good God.
Driving
And
me
I
crazy,
have had
baby.
Coffee. Driving you crazy. I have never driven a vehicle with fully autonomous driving. My BMW does have, the option to do lane assist and stuff like that when you're in cruise control.
Mm-hmm. Do you use that?
I have tried it just to see if it works. I love the distance. You turn on a cruise control and it keeps you basically
right.
Several car lengths behind the vehicle in front of you. I have played with it to see how it works on streets, and I'm telling you, no, thank you. No, thank you. I have, done what would normally be reasonable driving. For example, I was driving to a restaurant the other day, and there was work being done on the road where, they had signaling, and you had to drive around the place where they were doing work, and
right.
you ended up facing traffic on the other side because they have, they turn it into one lane. My car, I was using that at that point in time, and my car freaked the F out. And that's all I have to say. And anytime you're doing anything like that, making a little pass over the double yellow line on the left-hand side to pass something that's taking place on the right-hand side, it does stuff that does not make me comfortable at all. So I do not use that feature. Won't use that feature, and would not trust that feature in another vehicle. You know what I'm saying? I would not trust any kind of self-driving. I realize BMW doesn't have the fancy
true self-driving, but
that
lane
being
keep
said,
assist, accident avoidance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that stuff. I mean, accident avoidance, I'm cool with, but it doesn't respond in the way that I would respond. Even in the cruise control feature, it brakes way later than I would ever brake. If I see something going on in front of me, and I have to slow down quickly, it brakes way later than I'm comfortable with.
That's interesting. Braking. Do you have any settings in there that you can adjust some of that? I know the Subaru system has that, and I want to say the Infiniti system has has that, but I can't recall. I use
I'm
that
still digging around to see.
And something that I noticed, like I had the 2016 Forester, which had eyesight on it, and I don't remember which version it was, but it was one of the early ones. And its braking was quite aggressive. Like it would brake late. Like it never was an issue. Like it always stopped, but it was just like
brakes late and hard.
It's like, okay, I'd like to not have to buy brakes anytime soon, or replace the brakes. But I will say in the Crosstrek that I have, which is a 23, which has a newer version of that, it's way better on the braking. Not bad at all. But still the Infinity that my wife drives is even better. Like it's really good for that. Like I think I've mentioned before when we were talking some car stuff, like when we've gone on beach trips and stuff where it's just hours and hours of driving, we usually take her car, and it's really nice. Like it's just takes a lot of the fatigue stuff out of the way, those little micro adjustments that you have to make, and braking because the car slowed down, 100 feet ahead of you or whatever.
Right. That part I love. That feature works really well for highway driving, I think.
But I'm with you, like full autonomous, give the car the controls, sit there and read the newspaper. No.
The only way that works for me at all is, if they have magnetic tracks in the highway, where it's driving like that, a la Minority Report, if you remember the vehicles in Minority Report, where, they're going up the sides of buildings and doing all sorts of stuff like that, but it's like a maglev system. I'm down with that because, where each device is communicating with, each vehicle is communicating with the vehicle in front of it and the vehicle behind it. Although, and
it's funny, like I forget which, might have been Bloomberg's story. Some of the, again, reported reactions that some of the people in Apple were like, well, no kidding, this guy canceled. We knew this would never work. So, that's kind of how I felt about it.
I'm not. And we've seen what this looks like. People do stupid things when they have, and they're driving something that, weighs a ton or more and goes fast, very fast in some cases. And, I don't want that dude reading the newspaper next to me. You know what I'm saying? I don't.
Right. Like, some of the things you see people do on the road, like when I was commuting a lot, I remember driving down to Northern Virginia, and I saw there was a person driving that had a breakfast sandwich in one hand, a book in the other. And this wasn't in a Tesla or anything. This was
driving 10 years ago and
using their knee. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I wondered a little bit too, like how much of that decision to finally kind of drop it, again, based on the reports, was due to kind of external pressures from investors and maybe board members and things like that. With, by all accounts at this point, Apple seems to be pretty far behind in the AI stuff.
And they were way behind
and Siri has been crap. For ages.
Oh my gosh!
Now we may find in June at the developer conference that they were not really producing much publicly, although they have done some language models they've published. They've done a lot of documentation they've published, like technical papers and things like that. They've been buying AI companies a lot, and so they're not doing nothing. But I wonder if it was a bit of a shift to say, okay, we're ready to really kind of start cranking this. So we can't do everything.
No, and a vehicle never seemed like it was in the cards to me either. It seemed like they were saying it, like a little bit of a head fake. And I do think that they've gotten quite a bit of good tech out of this. I think they've gotten a lot of good information. And maybe they just decided for safety's sake, it makes no sense whatsoever at present to have a vehicle out there driving itself. But the technology it was able, or the information they were able to gain by spending, $1 billion or $2 billion on this is valuable. It allows them to do something that maybe we've never done before.
Yep. And I think the fully self-driving cars to be like locked in and great, that's so hard to do because there's so many variables, and I think people underestimate how quickly we can react to things as humans, like because we've got the ability to look ahead down the road, know from previous driving history that, hey, this person's drifting. I guarantee you they're going to drift over into this lane, and they do. And I just don't think that's coming anytime soon. If people work on it, I think it's great. It pushes other things forward more than likely, but I don't know. I think that's kind of like the same people who, with the AR, VR stuff, say, well, when it's in eyeglasses format, that's when I'll get it. And I'm like, dude, that's a long ways off.
Right.
But
that's me, by the way.
Fodder for another show. But
yeah, totally true. And I don't think it's possible. I mean, I was kind of joking about the maglev system in the roadway, but until it's integrated both into the vehicle and into the road itself, and maybe communication between vehicles, something that you've got, information being, I don't see it. I don't think standalone cars, particularly in an environment where you've got individuals driving vehicles, and then you've got a computer driving a vehicle. You're going to have different consistencies that are difficult to respond to.
Right.
So that's me. So in 20 years, when I'm old and smoking cigars and drinking bourbon on the front porch, somebody can come back to me and say, "You're a genius, boy. You do it all. You saw the future in the past."
Maybe I'll say that to you in episode
4,560. Yeah, there you go. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we've talked about cars. We've talked about a keyboard. We've burned another 30 or so minutes of your time.
We did.
And we're grateful that you're here. You can reach us at feedback@basicafshow.com. We'd like to hear from you. We have stickers and magnets. If anybody's interested, we'd be happy to send you one.
For free.
For free, yes.
Because we're nice.
Because we are, and we can afford to spend money on a stamp. That's about it.
You're not lying.
Show artwork by Randall Martin Design. Our soundscape by Psychokinetics. The music that you hear leading into and coming out of this show. Also, Celsius 7, who has a new album out that you can find on Apple Music, Spotify, all those places. Have a look. Pretty good stuff. And I think, Tom, that's us for another show.
That's it.
We did it.
We did it. And thank
show
you
30,
again.
right?
Show
this
30.
Is show
big
30.
3-0. That's it. 30. So
this is about when I was having a midlife crisis. I turned 30 and it was like,
God, that's a little early.
What am I doing with my life?
Right. All right. Well, everybody, again, thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your night. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.